Welcome everybody. Today we talked about chapter 17 and some students had problems with the net export function. Therefore, I would like to come up with some numerical examples which illustrate the relationship a little bit better. So, like this is a goods market equilibrium condition. On the left hand side we have goods supply. Then we have here like the consumption part. The second part, this is the investment part, then government spending, and the remaining part is a so-called net export function. And in a first step, I would like to talk about the last element in this equation. Why is it the case that the demand for domestic goods depends positively on the exchange rate? Like, why is it the case that there is a plus sign, a positive sign in front of NX3? So this is clarified as follows. First of all, I would like to think about what's going on when the exchange rate changes with respect to the European exports. Let's assume that the European economy is producing potatoes and the potato price measured in euros is equal to, the domestic price level is equal to 4 euros per potato. In scenario A, the exchange rate is at the level of like 2 euros for $1, so that the price of the potato measured in US dollar is equal to like $2. In scenario B, it is a case that the euro depreciates. The exchange rate increases and is now at the level of like 4 euros per US dollar, so that the price of a potato measured in US dollar is equal to only $1. The potatoes become cheaper for the Americans and Euroland will export more. And therefore, the demand for domestic goods increases. The right-hand side of the IS equation increases. In the next step, I would like to perform like the same thought experiment, and I would like to focus on the European imports. So here we are answering the question, what is the effect of an exchange rate change on the European imports? Let's assume that the US economy is producing tourist services and offers daily tickets to the Disney World in Orlando. The ticket price measured in US dollar is equal to $50 per day in the Disneyland. In scenario A, we once more assume that the exchange rate is at 2 euros per US dollar, so that the price for an European tourist measured in euros is equal to like 50 euros per day in the Disney World. In scenario B, once more, the euro depreciates and the exchange rate increases to the level of like 4 euros per US dollar, so that the price for a European tourist measured in euro is equal to like 100 euros per day in the Disney World. So Disney World Orlando becomes now more expensive for the European tourists, and hence the European tourist will stay in Europe and they will visit Disneyland Paris. So Euroland will import less, the European imports decrease, and the demand for domestic goods will increase. So the right-hand side of the IS equation increases. Let's now check the effects on the net exports. Net exports are defined as a difference between exports and imports. So equation 2 tells us net exports is equal to like the difference exports minus imports. In case that the depreciation of the domestic currency occurs, it is a case that we explained that exports of potatoes increase and like the imports of tourist services will decrease. So there are two effects on net exports which lead to an increase in net exports. Therefore, like the demand for domestic goods increases and there is a positive relationship between the exchange rate and the demand for domestic goods. And this is indicated by the plus sign in front of NX3. The specific value of this parameter will indicate by how much the demand for domestic goods increases in case that the exchange rate is up by 1 unit. So in case that NX3 is equal to 0.1, this would indicate that when the exchange rate increases by 1 unit, then the demand for domestic goods is up by 0.1 units. When we look at this term here, NX3 times E times P star divided by P, we have the real exchange rate in this expression. And therefore also, like the two goods prices play a role, we can also come up with the same line of argumentation, so that in case that the US goods price for a Disney World ticket increases, or in case that the domestic price for potatoes decreases, it will be the case that the real exchange rate increases and the demand for domestic goods increases. Nevertheless, like these two incidences here will not pop up in our lecture, because we assumed that in chapter 17 the two goods prices will be constant. We normalized them to 1, and we will not look at this case at all. This case will not pop up in our chapter. I would like to explain another detail in this equation. So I would like to talk about the difference between C1. C1 is definitely connected to the GDP variable. And then we also have another term like minus NX1Y in this equation. So what is the difference between C1 and NX1? What is the difference between C1 and NX1? C1 is called the marginal propensity to consume, and NX1 is the marginal propensity to import. Both parameters are connected to output, like to the GDP variable, to the income variable, like to the variable which we abbreviate with the letter Y. Let's assume the following numerical values. Let's assume that the marginal propensity to consume is equal to, like C1 equal to 0.8 and NX1 is equal to 0.3. What does it imply? In case that income increases by €1, private households will save 20 cents more than before and will consume 80 cents more than before. So the marginal propensity to consume is splitting up additional income into savings and consumption. The private households in our model will consume domestic goods as well as foreign goods. And now the big question is, how are these 80 cents split up for domestic goods and foreign goods? By how much is the demand for domestic goods up? In order to answer this question, we have to consider that the demand for foreign goods will increase by NX1 equal to 0.3, so by 30 cents. And hence, the demand for domestic goods increases by the difference between C1 and NX1, so 0.8 minus 0.3. So the demand for domestic goods will increase like by 50 cents. I hope that these little examples help, like to understand the first equation of the macroeconomic model of chapter 17. So in the first step, we talked about the last term here, NX3E, and we explained why there is a positive relationship between the demand for domestic goods and the exchange rate. And then we talked about the difference between C1 and NX1. I hope that this is helpful. In case that you have more questions, let us know, send an email, and then we can answer to your specific question. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice day.